They didn't just steal my patent, they stole my name, my future, and for a long time, they made me believe I deserved it. You'd think betrayal comes with a bang. Screaming, slam doors, lawsuits. Mine came in the form of an email. Subject line: Final filing confirmation, intellectual property transfer. At first, I thought it was a system glitch. I was sitting in a fluorescent lit lab at MIT, a protein bar half eaten, lines of code still glowing on my screen. I'd just pulled an all-nighter tuning the final model, an AI protocol that could detect fraudulent financial behavior weeks before it hit a balance sheet. Years of research, months of sleep deprivation, and suddenly, my name was gone. Not just absent, erased. The official patent submission listed 2 inventors. Neither of them were me, but both were family. I remember staring at the screen, breath locked in my chest, like my brain refused to process what my eyes already knew. I refreshed the page, checked the document metadata, logged into our shared repository. Everything matched. They didn't just take credit, they transferred full ownership, legally, quietly, without a trace of shame. It's a strange thing, realizing that people you trust didn't just abandon you. They planned it, carefully, deliberately, and the worst part, no one around me even noticed. The hallway outside the lab buzzed with life. Students laughed over ramen, debated neural nets, and final exams. My world had collapsed, and theirs kept spinning. Fast, loud, indifferent. That night, I sat alone in the dorm stairwell, watching the glow of Boston through a cracked window. And for the first time in my life, I felt smaller than my own shadow. I wasn't angry, not yet. I was stunned, like a part of me had been amputated without anesthesia. The realization didn't hit like lightning. It came slow, like cold water rising while you're too tired to swim. They didn't just steal my idea. They didn't just claim my future. They buried me with it. And what they didn't know, what they never imagined, was that I wasn't staying in the grave. They invited me to the office under the pretense of alignment. I should have known. The building was glass and concrete, like most high-end tech firms in Midtown. Polished, sterile, expensive. The kind of place where ambition wears perfume and betrayal comes in legalese. The conference room they led me into looked more like a set than a workspace. Tall windows, a massive marble table, and a digital wall displaying Titan Core's stock price in real time. It was up. Of course it was. They were about to take my work global. He stood as I walked in. Smile like a sales pitch. Voice 2 notches too warm. Glad you could make it. Sit, please. Let's talk this through. I didn't sit. She was already there, sipping espresso like this was brunch. Her heels crossed perfectly at the ankle, red lipstick, flawless. We wanted to clarify a few things before the board meeting, she said smoothly. There seems to be some confusion about roles and ownership. Confusion? That's what they were calling it now. I pulled the patent document from my bag and dropped it on the table. This has my algorithm, my signature architecture, my predictive loop. What it doesn't have is my name. They didn't flinch. He folded his hands. We felt your involvement had become unpredictable, emotionally volatile. She nodded, too calmly. We couldn't risk delays or questions from the investors. You know how perception matters. Perception. Right. Not truth. Not contribution. Just perception. And the best part? They'd already filed everything, spun the story, sold the rights. The deal was done. I looked across the table, and saw exactly what I needed to see. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a strategy. So what now? I asked, my voice low. He slid a folder toward me, a settlement offer. High six figures, an NDA that read more like a muzzle. She gave me that corporate smile, the one that says, "This is the best you're ever going to get. Take it and disappear quietly." But what they didn't know was, I had no intention of disappearing. Not this time. I didn't sign the NDA. I didn't take the payout. I walked out of that glass fortress with my name still mine. But apparently, that was the only thing I got to keep. The fallout didn't hit all at once. It came like a slow bleed. First, my keycard access at the lab stopped working. They called it a system glitch. Funny, it never got fixed. Then, my cloud credentials were revoked. I reached out to the research lead. No response. Then came the emails, the polite ones, full of, "We've decided to move in another direction." The people who used to ask me for input now wouldn't even CC me. And just like that, I went from lead developer to the girl who used to be involved. I tried reaching out to our academic advisor. She didn't take my call. Instead, I got a message from the university's innovation office. "We appreciate your passion, but the IP in question now belongs to a registered entity. Your dispute appears to be civil, not institutional." Translation: you're on your own. Even the faculty who once praised my work suddenly developed amnesia. It was like I'd been cut from the cast halfway through the show, and the script had been rewritten to pretend I was never in it to begin with. I logged into the official research archive one night, hoping, just hoping, my name was still listed under co-authors. It wasn't. The paper we drafted together was published. The tech had been demoed at a conference. The press release went out with smiling headshots, none of which were mine. I stared at that screen for a long time, not crying, not screaming, just sitting there, quiet, swallowed. It hit me then. They hadn't just taken my work. They'd made sure the world would never know it was mine to begin with. They didn't blacklist me. They did something worse. They made me invisible. Seattle wasn't part of the plan, but rock bottom rarely shows up where you expect. I arrived on a one-way ticket, carrying a duffel bag that held less of my life and more of what was left of it. A laptop, 2 hoodies, and the last draft of the algorithm I no longer owned. The city greeted me like it greets everyone, with rain that didn't fall, just hung in the air like grief that wouldn't leave. I found a room in a basement unit near the industrial district. The walls were thin, the light was yellow, and the heater made a clicking sound like it was trying to keep going but didn't know why. It fit. I took the night shift at a data labeling center. No one asked for resumes there, just a pulse and a signature on a non-disclosure form. 8 hours a night, I sat in front of a gray screen, tagging security footage, vehicles, faces, trash cans, anything the AI couldn't quite make sense of yet. Funny, right? I once built predictive systems to detect complex patterns. Now I was the human backfill for the algorithms I used to outrun. No one knew who I was, and after a while, I started forgetting too. I stopped calling home, stopped checking social media. Every time I saw a headline about Titan Core or a new breakthrough in behavioral AI, I scrolled past like it was someone else's life. Because maybe it was. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger takes energy. And when your soul is running on fumes, you don't rage, you endure. But even then, under flickering fluorescence, eating stale vending machine crackers at 3 a.m. A part of me refused to go numb. I watched. I listened. I started noticing things in the data that others missed: patterns in movement, loops in behavior, signals. And beneath all the noise, something small began to stir. Not revenge, design. The shift happened quietly. No music swell, no thunderclap, just a late-night diner, a cold cup of coffee, and a conversation I wasn't supposed to hear. 2 booths over, a man in a rumpled hoodie muttered something about pattern drift in audit logs. It sounded like nothing, unless you knew what to listen for. And I did. I waited until he pulled out a USB drive, muttering curses at his laptop. Then I slid into the booth across from him and said, "You're looking in the wrong layer. The metadata's been scrubbed, but the behavior logs haven't." He froze, then smiled, slow, not surprised, just impressed. His name was Devin, or at least that's what he told me. Ex-NSA, burned in a leak scandal. Brilliant, paranoid, exactly the kind of broken you need to rebuild something dangerous. We didn't start with a mission, just late nights, bad coffee, and code. We'd meet in corners of half-lit libraries, rent co-working spaces under fake names, swap ideas through encrypted chat even when we sat beside each other. Bit by bit, the thing took shape. Not a startup, not a company. A weapon, disguised as a tool. We called it Reg Shield. It didn't just analyze corporate data. It read behavior, mapped inconsistencies, flagged ghost movements in financial records, traced intent through the patterns no one else bothered to see. It didn't scream fraud. It whispered, "Watch this. Right here. This is where the lie starts." And the best part? No one knew it was us. No logos. No bios. No PR campaign. Just code that slipped in, did its job, and vanished, like we were never there. Because ghosts don't need to be seen. They just need to be felt. We never launched a product. No website, no pitch deck, no glossy branding with buzzwords like empower or streamline. Instead, we wrote a single line of code, light, invisible, and placed it in a sandbox environment used by a struggling compliance team in Ohio. They didn't know what it was at first, just a tool sent anonymously. No sender, no price tag, no press. We waited. 2 weeks later, they flagged a major internal transfer buried under 3 shell vendors, $8.6 million. Misclassified as IT upgrades. They sent it up the chain, quietly. The CFO resigned within 48 hours. Red Shield didn't just find the red flags. It understood the rhythm of corruption. When it sped up, when it got careful, when it thought no one was watching. So we did it again. This time with a boutique investment firm in Austin. Then a mid-sized logistics chain in Arizona. Each time the pattern was the same. Silence, discovery, collapse. No one knew who was behind it. All they knew was, someone out there is watching the watchers. We never asked for credit. That wasn't the point. It wasn't about headlines. It was about leverage. And then, like clockwork, it happened. Titan Core lost a contract, a big one, public-facing, heavily regulated, the kind that would have secured them another 5 years of dominance. Their official statement blamed market conditions. But I knew better. I'd written the lines of code that watched their internal models crumble from the inside out. It wasn't revenge. Not yet. It was a warning. And only the first one. It started like a whisper, a leaked spreadsheet, a flagged transaction, an anonymous forum thread that didn't stay anonymous for long. Then came the headlines, not the loud ones. At first, just small blurbs on niche financial sites. Minor audit discrepancy, at Titan Core's West Coast division. Shareholder concern over sudden CFO resignation. But those of us who knew how to read between the lines, we saw the spark. Within days, it spread. Clients pulled contracts. Regulators requested files they never used to ask for. Stockholders stopped smiling in investor meetings. And then, finally, someone cracked. An ex-employee dumped an encrypted folder to a whistleblower hub. Inside, falsified compliance reports, artificially delayed loss postings, email threads that showed they knew, and did it anyway. Suddenly, the coverage wasn't quiet anymore. Titan Core under federal investigation. Multiple executives named in SEC filing. Anonymous system flagged irregularities months ago. That last headline? Yeah, that was us. I watched it all unfold from a coffee shop with no name, tucked between a dry cleaner and a pawn shop. Laptop open, earbuds in, pretending I wasn't smiling. They were scrambling now, deleting files, lawyering up, calling in favors that used to come cheap and suddenly weren't picking up anymore. I didn't need to do anything. The code was already in place. It had already spoken. And while their empire burned from the inside, while the people who once called me unstable tried to keep their hands clean, I ordered another coffee, black, no sugar, because this time the bitter was on them. It came on a Thursday, an email, plain subject line, no logo, no signature. Just 4 words that hit harder than any headline ever could. Request for confidential meeting. At first, I thought it was bait, some corporate decoy, maybe even Titan Core fishing for names. But then a second email came, this time encrypted, routed through a federal server I recognized from my NSA contacts' old documentation. They didn't guess. They knew, not just what Red Shield was, but who was behind it. They gave me a time, a location, a name, no threats, no subpoenas, just an invitation. It was a hotel conference room, neutral ground, private enough to whisper, public enough not to disappear. He was already seated when I arrived. Dark suit, no badge in sight. She stood by the window, arms crossed, eyes scanning everything but me, until I sat down. "You're not in trouble," she said, "but you are in possession of something powerful." I didn't speak. He slid a folder across the table. Inside, screenshots, internal logs, and one still frame from a security feed. My silhouette, hunched over a terminal in Austin. 6 months ago, before the first domino fell. "We know it's you," he said, "and we don't want to stop you." That's when the shift happened. Because they weren't here to shut Red Shield down. They were here to recruit it. "Help us build it out," she said. "Take it wider, global, institutional." They didn't want justice. They wanted jurisdiction. I leaned back, hands steady on the armrests, though my pulse was anything but. This was no longer just about Titan Core. This was about who got to decide what truth looked like from here on out. And suddenly, I wasn't a ghost anymore. I was a variable in someone else's system. And I had to decide, was I going to be the one writing the code or the one being run by it? The invitation came through back channels. No logos, no signatures. Just a brief request from a senior executive at Titan Core asking for a closed-door meeting with Red Shield's leadership. They had no idea who they were really asking for. I chose the location myself, an upper-floor boardroom in a boutique high-rise downtown. Not overly corporate, not too casual, just sterile enough to feel familiar. To them, the view outside was a perfect slice of the skyline. Sharp, clean, oblivious. Inside, the air felt heavier than it should. They walked in together, suits tailored, faces practiced, still performing like this was just another quarterly negotiation. He extended a hand. I didn't take it. She offered a smile, the kind that once disarmed board members and buried dissenters in a single breath. But not this time. I said nothing for a moment. Let the silence settle. Let them squirm in it. Then I stepped to the head of the table. No introduction. No icebreakers. It's strange, isn't it? I said quietly. Being in a room with someone you tried to erase. That's when it happened. The flicker. In her eyes. In his jawline. Tight now, behind forced confidence. Recognition. And for a second. Just one brief, beautiful second. Neither of them knew what to say. I kept going. You asked to speak with Red Shield's founder. You're looking at her. Silence again. But this time, it was a different kind. Not the silence of power, the silence of realization. I let it hang, made them feel it. You remember, don't you? That meeting room, that settlement offer. The NDA, the moment you decided your reputation was worth more than my life's work. He tried to interrupt. I raised a hand. Number, you've had your time. I leaned in slightly. You didn't just take something from me. You taught me something, too. Pause. That the only thing more dangerous than someone with nothing to lose is someone you already buried. And I came back to dig up everything. I didn't yell, didn't slam the table, didn't give them the satisfaction of thinking this was about emotion. Instead, I pulled out a slim folder and slid it across the polished wood between us. They hesitated. Of course they did, because people like them, they only fear paper when it's real. Inside, screenshots, timestamps, email threads with subject lines like patent draft, final version, no CC. Meeting notes marked confidential, where they discussed strategically distancing from a volatile co-developer. That was me. There was even a signed internal memo recommending removal of my name from the provisional filing to preserve narrative consistency. They read in silence, page by page, word by word. I watched their faces harden, then falter, because this wasn't an accusation. This was a mirror. You told the board I walked away, I said. Told investors I couldn't handle pressure. You labeled me unstable, just enough to kill my credibility, but not enough to trigger liability. She swallowed, but didn't speak. You didn't just bury me, I continued. You made sure there was no grave to find. I pulled out one final page. Their settlement offer. 6 figures. NDA. Silence in exchange for erasure. This was your price for my silence, I said, tapping the document once. But you forgot something. Pause. I don't need your money. I stood, walked slowly to the window. The city stretched out below. Wide, tall, unbothered. I built something better than revenge. Turned back to face them. I built truth that doesn't ask for permission. And now it was loose. The silence after I finished wasn't awkward. It was strategic. She was the first to speak, of course, always the smoother one, the kind who could lie with grace and still walk out of the room with applause. We understand this has been complicated, she began, choosing her words like stepping through a minefield. But this doesn't have to end in destruction. He jumped in next, voice carefully rehearsed. We're prepared to make it right. A full partnership offer. You'd lead the new division. Name your terms. They laid out numbers, equity, control, not because they believed I deserved it, but because they finally understood I didn't need them. They weren't making an offer. They were begging for relevance. I didn't look at the folder they pushed forward, didn't touch the pen. "You think this is about a deal?" I said quietly. "You're still playing the old game." She sat straighter, eyes narrowing. "We're offering to bring you in. At the top. You've made your point. We're listening now." I almost laughed. Not out loud, just the kind that echoes inside your chest, like a bell that stopped ringing years ago. "You don't get to offer me a seat at a table you built on my bones." And then I paused. Let that sink in. "You want to survive? Start rebuilding your company, your reputation, your conscience, if there's anything left of it." I stood up calmly, like a meeting was ending. "But let's be clear." One last glance across the table. "You're not partnering with me. Beat, you're lucky I'm not burying you." And just like that, the game was over. Not with fire, not with fury, just with the quiet certainty of someone who no longer needed their approval or their permission. He called the next morning, not through work, not through a message relayed by someone else. Just his voice, raw, low, like he hadn't used it in a while. "I saw the article," he said. I didn't know it was that bad. That bad. As if betrayal could be measured in degrees. He asked if I'd meet him, just to talk. I agreed, not because I owed him that, but because part of me needed to look him in the eyes and see if there was anything left of the man who once told me I was brilliant before anyone else did. We met at a quiet park bench. Early, gray sky, bare trees, like the world had paused, holding its breath. He looked older, tired in a way that didn't come from time, but from avoiding the truth for too long. I sat. He didn't speak right away. When he did, it was almost a whisper. "I thought they were doing what was best. For the company. For you." I stayed quiet. He kept going. "They told me you were burning out, that you'd become unstable, that if I stepped in, I'd make it worse." And there it was. That word again. Unstable. The label they all agreed on, silently. The word they used to tuck me away, like a broken piece of the machine. I looked at him. Not angry. Not cold. Just tired. "You didn't ask me," I said. He nodded slowly, shame rising like steam from his collar. "I was scared," he admitted. "Not of them. Of being wrong. Of choosing sides." "You didn't choose a side," I replied. "You chose silence." He looked down, hands clasped like prayer. "But this wasn't redemption. It was reckoning." "I'm proud of what you've built," he said. I stood. "You don't get to be proud now." I didn't say it to punish him. I said it to free myself, because some wounds don't need to bleed to be real. Some absences echo louder than words ever could. I didn't plan to go public, at least not like that. But some truths, they reach a pressure point. And when they do, you either release them or let them consume you from the inside. So I opened my laptop, created a new Substack account, no name, no photo, just a title, The Patent They Buried. And I started writing, line by line. I told them everything, the theft, the signatures, the meetings I was excluded from, the silence that followed when I dared to ask why. I embedded screenshots of the emails, the documents, the revision history. I linked the patent filing, showed the metadata, showed the math behind the algorithm. Mine, still intact, still traceable to every notebook I'd ever synced. And at the end, I didn't ask for sympathy. I asked a question. What do you do when the people who stole your future are celebrated for building one? I hit publish. No PR push, no press contacts, just a link, shared quietly. One DM at a time. Within 24 hours, it hit the front page of TechWatch. By 72, it was trending on every platform I'd once been shut out of. And the ripple started. Former employees spoke up. Investors started asking questions they should have asked years ago. Even students at my old university circulated a petition. Reinstate her name. Correct the record. But I didn't post follow-ups. Didn't schedule interviews. Didn't go on podcasts or live streams. Because this wasn't about being seen. It was about being undeniable. And now they knew. The girl they thought they erased. She was the one holding the pen now. The chamber felt colder than it looked. Marble walls, rows of microphones, cameras tucked into corners like watching eyes, waiting for someone to slip. I wasn't wearing a suit. I wasn't coached. No publicist. No legal team whispering behind me. Just me. And the truth. The nameplate read, Founder, Red Shield. And for the first time, no one questioned it. The room hushed as I leaned toward the mic. A senator cleared his throat. Ms. Brooks, in your opinion, what failed? I didn't blink. Nothing failed, I said. It worked exactly as it was designed to. A murmur, then silence again. I went on. The system didn't break. It simply prioritized the wrong things. Profit over protection, narrative over truth. People like me, we aren't rare. We're just usually erased before we can finish the sentence. I looked down the line of suits in front of me. Some curious, some defensive, and a few quietly ashamed. I wasn't asking for special treatment. I asked for a name on what I built. Instead, I was told I was unstable, difficult, replaceable. I paused. Let the weight settle in the room like dust no one wanted to admit they saw. RegShield doesn't just find bad data, it finds bad patterns. Patterns of people getting buried for being right too early or too loud. There was a moment, just a moment, where you could hear nothing but the soft hum of the mic. You asked, what failed? The silence. That's what failed. Then I leaned back, not smug, not triumphant, just done explaining. Because finally, I didn't have to prove I was worth listening to. I already had the mic. The email landed at 2:17 a.m. No subject line, no body text, just a resume attached. I almost deleted it. But then I saw the sender's name. His, different email, slightly altered LinkedIn title. But I recognized the formatting, the way he always capitalized the word strategy, like it was a religion. An hour later, another application came in, this time from her. No disguise, just bold confidence in black and white bullet points. Experienced executive, proven leadership in scaling enterprise tech. She didn't mention the patent, didn't mention me. Maybe she thought I wouldn't notice, or worse, would forgive. I didn't respond, didn't forward the files to HR. I just clicked the drop-down, marked them both as reviewed, and closed my laptop. No revenge speech, no grand rejection, because some victories don't need a microphone. They just need to be seen. And the irony? Their files now sat in the same digital system they once told me would never amount to anything. RegShield, the tool they laughed at, the tool they tried to erase. Now the only door still open to them was the one I built after they locked me out. And here's the part no one prepares you for. That moment when power shifts so silently, they don't even realize they're holding out a hand to the person they once buried. I used to think justice looked like a courtroom, a verdict, a press conference with flashing cameras and someone saying, "We're sorry." But that's not how it comes. Not always. Sometimes justice is a slow burn. A folder marked reviewed, an inbox that stays quiet. Sometimes it's not about winning louder, it's about outlasting the lie. So now I've got a question for you. What would you have done if the people who raised you, praised you, then erased you, came back years later holding out their hands? Would you shake them? Would you forgive? Would you hand them a job or hand them a lesson? Would you take the high road or build your own? Because here's the thing no one tells you about betrayal. It doesn't end with revenge. It ends when you decide it's over. And for me, it ended the moment I realized I didn't need to prove anything to the people who tried to bury me. I just had to show them I grew roots. Let me know in the comments. What would you do? And if this story hits somewhere deep, you already know what to do. Like, comment, subscribe. Because sometimes the best revenge is simply being undeniable.